we're here live, and we're discussing Tisha B'Av, and we're discussing the first Torah portion in the book of Deuteronomy, which is Devarim, of course, the name of the book of Deuteronomy in Hebrew. And Mark, I was just reading some of your past essays on Tisha B'Av and on Devarim, and you definitely saw a connection. What do you find interesting about Tisha B'Av? It's a pretty difficult holiday. It's another 25-hour fast. It's preceded by 3 weeks of semi-morning practices, and then 9 days of particularly stringent practices, and then one day which is very similar to Yom Kippur, commemorating the destruction of the first temple, the second temple, and many of the other tragedies in Jewish history. What do you find interesting about Tisha B'Av?
Well, it's more than interesting. I mean, I think, let's go back to your Dvar Torah.
We're on the beach together.
That's a good starting point, because it's similar to what started my other shiur. It was kind of a thought about that. So, so you made you came from a perspective of Tisha B'Av as a religious practice.
Yeah.
As a religious holiday.
Well, yeah.
And I just don't, I'd say that the first point is I don't see it that way.
Okay.
So I don't come at it from there. It's not about discipline. It's not about a cold shower. It's not about anything. It is. It's a fact. These are historical. It's a historical reality. So these are to some degree. It's not a. It's kind of interesting, Things get ritualized. So what people take away from the Tisha B'Av experience is that getting into arguments about whether you can shower this way or that way, or shaving and this and that, and people get hung up on the minutia and entirely forget the purpose of it is, what it's about. And those are supposed to be outward marks commemorating an event rather than the reverse. So it's not like there's some, like that guy wrote in the Jewish Week a couple of years ago that that Tisha B'Av was supposed to be some corrective to having a good time in the summer.
Yeah, to bring us down.
That's not what, God didn't do that in order to teach us, to give us good excuses to listen to rabbis telling us about what to do or not to do during the 3 weeks and 9 days. But rather, it's the other way around. These are supposed, to some degree, natural responses to national calamity. And despite having been raised in a religious background my whole life, I was also raised in, I suppose, a Hebraist intellectual background. And it's impossible to see it outside of that. And I think even the rabbis themselves saw it that way, particularly in the evolution through the three destructions that are commemorated. Right? We talk about three major tragedies that seem to fall out at the same time.
Okay, I'm thinking about the destruction of the first two temples. What was the third?
So then there's probably the most complex of all. Oh, I can't see any of that.
I can read it, don't worry. I can read it if there's anything interesting.
Good?
Yeah,
I saw some of your other... I was watching the other ones for tips, and I saw other people who were reacting to this. Well, essentially we're talking about three calamitous events that occur. And these are national historical events. So there's the two destructions, the two temple destructions.
I'm listening. There's a beautiful woman in the chat room, but I'm still totally... So the destruction of the two temples, and what's the third? Then let me interfere.
So there's...
and the Bar Kokhba.
We can come back and do Tu B'Av after. Right. The big romantic day after Tisha B'Av. So, by the way, can I tell you something that, many of your audience may remember this, but there was always a paradox that the week after Tisha B'Av, which was Shabbat Nachamu, right, the first of the 7 Haftarot of redemption, that was classically, up until the mid-70s, I think, the standard Jewish weekend for singles to go and have singles weekends. I remember this as a kid. It seemed like an entrenched, religious thing. But anyway,
Do they still do that? Do they still do that?
I have no idea. I think since Grossinger's closed, probably not. But.
Right.
Oh, those were the days.
Ah.
But anyway, getting back to serious stuff. So 3 events happen, right? The first 2 temples.
Yes.
And it's interesting, and we'll look at some of the Midrashim and the way that the Gemara reads these episodes, and the way that they read these episodes. It'll be surprising, I think. And then a third one, which is buried in there, to some degree is the bulk of the text, but people don't recognize that it's a separate event, and that's the destruction of Beitar in 135, which Chazal has a harder time dealing with than the other 2, in part because that was one where Rabbi Akiva thought Bar Kokhba was the Messiah.
How many rabbis thought that Bar Kokhba was the Messiah? A lot.
You see, that's the thing. They didn't have blogs in those days, so we don't have like an accurate counting of.
But were there a lot?
Go to the Huffington Post to get a list of
right.
Who's on either side. But yes, many. It seemed like it was obviously a very big deal, and a great deal of blood was spilled.
And a lot of rabbis also said, Akiva, you're wrong. Right?
There are people on either side, but
Yeah.
again, the text we have is from several centuries later.
Yeah.
So it's easy to add your ancestor to the winning side.
Right.
No, but clearly it was a major thing. But that's not the issue. The issue is not so much the destruction of Beitar, but the fact is that at that point in time, something terribly horrible happens. See, this is already modern history in the Jewish tradition. So what happens here is that at that point the Romans forbid Jews to enter Jerusalem. That's when Jerusalem becomes renamed Eila Capitolina, and Jews are now banned from entering. And of course, the land gets destroyed at this point, and it's much more. They have an easier time recovering from the Second Temple than they do from the destruction of Beitar. From the Bar Kokhba, the aftermath of the Bar Kokhba rebellion. And it's interesting how this stuff is coded. So one of the interesting things. There's another time of mourning that we have, and again, seems like ritualism without any sense at all, right? Which are the weeks of the Omer.
Yeah, between Passover and Shavuot.
And it doesn't even make sense. I mean, it's interesting in the Hasidic literature. Very little is spoken about those laws. The Litvaks like that because this is fun for the Lithuanians. Tell people you can't shower, you can't shave. Things you can't do. That's very appealing to a certain strain of Judaism. But even there, that's all of that comes from 2 references in the Talmud, offhand references to some kind of death of the students of Rabbi Akiva, and they call it a plague. But many historians believe that we have no other documentation of the plague. And again, this is a well-documented time in history. Right? This is already 135, so this is already you have Christianity already exists. The church fathers are around. There's a lot of writing from that period already. That's a well-documented period. We don't have anything about a plague, but we do have a lot about the rebellion. So it's likely that actually that's a coded reference to the revolt against Rome.
Yes, because it wouldn't do to just come right out and talk about the revolt against Rome when Rome was still dominating the land of Israel.
Rome and Edom, up until it's before the Muslim invasion. So. You still have they're in power. Obviously this is a large chunk of time that's dedicated to this concept. So it's obviously of great importance. And I think further Jewish history attested to the importance of this in that we're still in this diaspora, we're still in this, and of course having gone through the events of recent time, which do or don't become linked to these sets of episodes. I mean, clearly there's some connection.
But it wasn't like did the rabbis mandate fast days on Tisha B'Av back in the Talmudic times? I think that.
Yeah.
But I thought fasting on Tisha B'Av was a much later.
Nope. It's in the Gemara.
Really, it's in the Gemara.
Yeah. It's in the Midrash. It's in the Gemara.
Let's see what
I have a text here.
Okay,
what do you got?
And looking at the Wikipedia entry on Tisha B'Av, said it reflects in Talmudic literature character of constantly growing